Okay, so today is the first anniversary of Entrepreneurshit. We've run so far, this is our sixth session, this is right, and it's been quite a ride. We had recurring people coming over. We have had wonderful speakers sharing with us the hard issues of entrepreneurship. We have talked about sales. We have talked about how to measure, how to use the metrics, and how to implement them from a technical point of view. And our focus has always been to talk about what are the challenges out there. Because in this mythomania culture that we have nowadays, coming from the Hollywood world, we have a lot of, yes, let's do it, Herbalife, you're going to be millionaires, and so on. And actually, when you get down to the trenches, it comes to some hardcore technical execution details that no one told you that were going to happen. It comes down to dealing with your family, friends, with your couple, and not having time for anyone, having to put them all into your prioritization list. And since it's very much based on magical thinking, most of the entrepreneurship all the entrepreneurship guidelines or playbooks. We wanted to outsmart Silicon Valley and to talk about the hard challenges, because we believe that entrepreneurs are hackers, and if they know which challenges are they to face, they will try to hack them. And those challenges are not just on the customer development side. That's pretty clear. There are a lot of thought given to that, and a lot of blogs and a lot of materials to read about. But there are other technical issues when they tell you about, so go out and do inbound marketing. So then what's inbound? What's marketing? What are the channels? How much shall I spend in Facebook? Shall I spend 500 euros or 200? So this kind of details, we say that the devil lives in the details. And so we believe, and so we've been trying to work on. Tonight we have a very special session, because we have both a very dear friend of mine who, years after we knew each other from other fields, I discovered that was one of the first guys to apply this kind of work, Agile methodologies or Agile frameworks in Spain. He has been working with Agile frameworks since 2005. He will tell us about that, the exact dates later. And he's going to tell us a lot of what this comes down to, and what is Agile in the trenches. I am probably going to, later on I will give you some bullshit on how Agile, how Scrum was created in the Lord of the Rings. Okay, just a funny story. And then Jeff Sutherland, co-creator of Scrum, and author of Scrum, The Art of Doing Twice in Half the Time, is going to talk us about his work and about where Scrum comes from, and how he envisions Scrum to move from a developing software developer environment to a general management tool. This is something that we have been actually doing here, and our friends from Nonabox are pioneering in Spain, and it's been quite a blast from what they told me. We are applying it also in management, in general management, not just for software development in Leap. And this is probably one of the most challenging and most thrilling challenges to management in the 21st century, on how to work with teams and try to empower them and make them perform better, and how to get also a more human management style on the front line, in the trenches. We come back after a long summer. Okay, it's November. We've been on holidays until today, and we come back with our friends and supporters, our collaborators from the very first day that are Scrum Ritual. They have been with us, stand with us for all these 6 editions. And they have this Movimiento Ritual, which is a program with they are helping entrepreneurs, and you can apply to get some collaboration from them and some support. So we are going to go ahead to we'll start telling us about Agile from the trenches. And Jordi, I give you to your audience.
Okay, preparing it, just a minute.
I will mute my microphone so there's no echo.
Okay, hello everybody. This is Jordi Pradel. My Twitter handle is Agile Jordi, and as Nast said, I know him from another field, and he asked me to make a short speech about Agile from real. I mean, from the trenches, in the sense that I'm applying Agile for real since 2005, and I think there are some myths and some misconceptions that I can help people understand because I've been working there. So it's a talk by a developer. After all, I'm talking about software development, but I'm sure you can apply some of my experiences in other fields as well. So a short introduction about me. I'm the founder of Agileology. We are a small company. We do tailor-made software. Like I said, we are, and like the name implies, we are doing Agile software development since 2005, and there were really few people by then applying it. I'm also a part-time professor at Universitat Politècnica de Catalunya, which is the polytechnical university from Catalonia. And finally, or not finally, but I'm also organizer of a meetup of Scala developers. That just so you know me, you can follow me. I'm usually tweet about technical stuff, but sometimes I also speak about Agile project management. And so what's interesting to know about Agile for people approaching it from the entrepreneurship. Okay, I organized some slides advertising, or not advertising, but telling people to beware of some of the dangers of Agile. And the first one I want to beware you of is the synecdoche. I don't know if you saw the film, it's amazing. But just in case, a synecdoche is that figure of speech where you use a term for a part or vice versa. And the example we have in Wikipedia is when you refer to workers' hired hands. But there's another common example in our world, in software development and other project management worlds, which is using the term Agile software development when you, in fact, are referring to using sticky notes. And the thing is, Agile is not only using sticky notes or cards or doing that kind of, I would say, hippie stuff. It's not just about that, and many people just picks that part and thinks they are being Agile, or say they are being Agile because of not using the usual tools. It's not the only synecdoche I found when thinking about Agile software development. Another one, Agile is not using boards. Many people use a board like this in the picture you can see here. And they automatically say they are using Agile methodologies, but that's not Agile. That may be a part of Agile, but that's not Agile at its own. It's not about iterating when you're developing software. I mean, Agile developers use iterations, and we do retrospectives after each couple of weeks or so, but that's not Agile neither, or it's not itself Agile. And it's not about writing fewer docs neither. So beware of using the term Agile for anything else than what Agile really means, and I'm going to that in a minute. The other thing I wanted to beware people, and it's in the same line I'm talking about, it's bewaring of myths, because Agile is full of myths and misconceptions, and you have just a few I found quickly Googling about that. One of the myths is that Agile and Scrum are the same. And that's not true, in the sense that Agile is something that came, a way of thinking about software development that's been evolved into a way of thinking about project management in other fields as well. And Scrum is just one of the ways you can use Agile, and it's one of the really good ways, but there are other ways to use Agile, and the danger is trying to use a Scrum without being Agile, which makes no sense at all. Another of the myths I wanted to bust as far as I can is Agile means no discipline. That's not true. In fact, Agile developers need to be really hard at work, and they need to be really self-disciplined, because it obliges you to think in a way that may not be natural for many people. So you need to really change the way you think. And I'm going into the manifesto in a moment. I'm pretty sure you already know about it, but just to put some context into those myth-busting. Some other myths that I wanted to fight against. Agile means no process. That's not true. In fact, there is a process when you do Agile. It's just a process that it's adapting continually itself to the circumstances, to the things you encounter when you are developing software or doing whatever project you are doing. It's a process that, therefore, that it's difficult to follow because you need to adapt it continually, but that's a better process we have found to develop software and to develop projects in some other fields. Agile means no planning. That's another myth. We really do planning, but we do an adaptive planning again. So same, like I said, with the process. But the two myths I wanted to fight against with all of my soul, I would say, is Agile is not the cure-all for software development challenges or for any other challenge for that matter. And it's not pain-free. In fact, many people I approach when talking about Agile make criticism about Agile when they find one particular problem that Agile doesn't solve. And okay, that's okay for me. I mean, Agile is not solving all the problems you may encounter. Agile is probably the best way we have found to fight those problems, but it's not a cure by itself. And in plenty of occasions, Agile is putting the spotlight on those problems, and just that it's quite good compared with any other way of developing software or confronting those challenges. I mean, knowing what you don't know or what you thought you were not sure you knew, it's an important step towards solving that problem. And Agile is continually searching for the next challenge, putting the spotlight on that, and working on solving that problem using retrospective and adapting itself if the problem is too hard with the current approach. But it's not pain-free. That is never pain-free. In fact, we are confronting those challenges face-to-face instead of trying to look for another path, because that would only leave the problem there and never solve it. And therefore, there be dragons. So after all, you're entrepreneurs. You're not developing or fighting challenges which are easy to solve. you wouldn't be an entrepreneur if that was the situation. You're doing something that has never been before, hopefully. Your business model is probably unclear and or subject to change because you need to adapt yourself to the business needs you detect on the way. So your software requirements are changing continually, and that's very good. And we love that as software developers if we are agile. But the thing is, that makes software development really, really, really difficult because the easy way to develop software or to develop any project is to have a priori plan, one that you can stick with, one where nothing changes, but that's not what we need. So sticking with the way we managed projects when we had unchanging requirements and we had a known situation, and it's like, I don't know, it's something that won't work for your situation where you have some really thought challenges to focus on. So what do we do? How do we fight those dragons? How do we try to avoid believing those myths? And I always stick with the same thing. I go to the Agile Manifesto and try to follow the values expressed there. You may know them, and the principles. I'm sure you all know about the Agile Manifesto, but just a quick iteration over it. You know that we value individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. That is, there is value on the items on the right, but we value the items on the left most. And I think that fits perfectly entrepreneurship, in the sense that you truly need to respond to change over following a plan, because even your business model is something that will be changing. We need to respond to that, obviously. But what after that? What about the principles? In the manifesto, we have a lot of clues about what kind of team do you need if you are going to develop a software or to develop some other kind of project similar to those. And the first and foremost principle is, and I'm speaking in the name of developers here, our highest priority is to satisfy the customer. And here, probably, the customer is your client, whoever brings money in your business plan. And that needs to be our highest priority. I mean, if I'm using sticky notes, I'm using a board in a wall, I'm then following all the Agile practices you may have heard about, but I'm not prioritizing to satisfy the customer over everything else. I'm not being Agile. And that's one of the dangers of picking the wrong team or as a developer of picking the wrong approach to being Agile. I mean, that's the foremost and the most important thing. Then we welcome changing requirements, because our highest priority is to satisfy the customer, and we know that welcoming those requirements, even when they change, is the way to provide better value. We pay continuous attention to technical excellence and good design, so you need a team which is able to pay that continuous attention to technical excellence. The reason for that is probably technical itself. I mean, if you want to be able to welcome changing requirements, your project, whatever your product, whatever you're developing, needs to be really excellent in being able to adapt itself and to be changeable, so that you can really welcome those requirements without paying too much price for those changes. As a development team, we need to self-organize, and that means two things. That means that the team needs you guys to trust them to make decisions and organize their people the best way they can. That also means that the team has a great responsibility to pay for that trust and to provide as much value as they can. So we need that kind of guy. You need that kind of guy as a developer. And finally, for all this to work, we need motivated individuals. So you're the entrepreneur, but your developers should be as motivated as you in making your project successful. And that's something that you can see on the in the eyes of your developers probably. So trust them to get the job done, but ask them to be as motivated as possible, because that's really important for that kind of projects to success. On the other hand, there's the other principles which may answer the question, what kind of entrepreneur do we like as developers? In fact, do you need to be for your project to succeed? And the thing is, one of the points I would like to stress is business people and developers must work together daily. That's in the manifesto, and you probably know it. But that means that you're spending a lot of time with your developers, with whoever is developing your project, and probably more time than you thought you were going to spend, because we need you continually to solve questions about your business model, your requirements, to prioritize what's more important for you at the moment, for the stakeholders, in fact, for whoever you're developing software or the product for. So we need you there almost full time, and that's a lot of work that you need someone to do, yourselves or someone that knows the business and your project as well as you. And that's probably not the developer who will be focused on executing the project, on developing it in the particular case of software development. We deliver working software frequently, from a couple of weeks to a month. Preferably, we usually prefer a couple of weeks, and that means again that we need you to be there validating our work every couple of weeks, which is again, we need you to pay attention to what we do, to provide feedback, to provide criticism, etc. The third question I like to answer by reading the manifesto is, what kind of tools do we need? And it depends in the kind of project. I'm not going into much details there. You can ask me afterwards if you're interested. But in a particular case of software development, we want to grant the acceptance of the product by the product owner, whoever he is or she is. But then we need some tools that allow us to verify that we have not broken anything, that the product continues to be what it should be, and what is supposed to be throughout the development. That means automated testing, continuous integration, continuous deployment, behavior-driven development, and some kind of tools that I think you should know if you, at least if your product has software in it and you want to develop software. I just stress BD because it's one of the techniques that it's mostly for you. You can ask your developers to apply it, and something I think it's very valuable to learn for you guys if you do software at least. There's one principle I want to stress as well. It's not answering any particular question, but it's simplicity. And I love the definition those guys decided to include in the manifesto, which is the art of maximizing the amount of work not done. And that is essential, because if you're looking for a particular business model that works, you are already thinking in terms of minimum viable product. And in fact, that's perfect for us as Agile software developers. I mean, apply minimum viable to almost everything that you can, so that we develop only the essential parts that allow you to take the important decisions regarding what is the next important part, and iterate over that. In extreme programming, which is another methodology that many people uses to complement the Scrum, they have that acronym YACNI, which means you ain't gonna need it. And the thing is, start by thinking that you won't need that functionality or that feature or whatever, and only at it's perfectly clear that it doesn't apply to that particular feature. So unless you're very sure that you will need that for your customers or for your clients or whoever, unless you're applying it immediately, think that you ain't gonna need it in the future. That's the way to have the most simple solution possible solution, and that makes you more agile, to be able to change things, to change your requirements, even your business model is needed. So you may have watched this interesting video. I took an image from there. Here is the whole picture. So you need a product owner, probably yourself. You need to hear the stakeholders, and you need a development team, and you need really good communication so that you can prioritize which of the here represented as cards, which of the stories, functionalities, features you are including in your product, and you need to throw away everything that's not essential, because your development team is using the resources you have to build the most perfect, not the most perfect, but the better product you can build with those resources. So make those resources pay their price. I mean, be very aware that your prioritization is the most difficult part in all this process. And we as developers or project executors, let's say, we need that prioritization to be really nailed, because that's the important part, and that's your part, guys. So I thought it was going to be really short, so here you have my contact in case you want to contact me, and that's all on my part.
Hello. So, is there any question that you would like to ask? I know the communication, Jordi, has been a bit so because of the connectivity, but maybe there's someone that has a silver bullet that wants to shoot to Jordi, or otherwise we'll leave him be because he has a very special guest at his meeting. Okay, Jordi has done a very wide wrap-up and sum up of what Agile is and what are the principles. I definitely, if you have not yet gone into the Agile trenches, and as it shows for you being here, I encourage you to take note of those contacts of Agile Jordi, and shoot him later on when you have a problem on the road. Jordi, thank you very much. Merci. Moltes pedos.
Thank you.
Ens veiem pronto. Adeu.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Those 1,000 tabs is the one in which I have my presentation. This is going to be short and painless, okay? So in English, it's not so funny, okay? But in Spanish, since it's a Scrum, it sounds like loop. It helps me go back to my retro fanboy gamer times and mix it all together until you ask me about Scrum. So this is me, whatever. And since we go back to the definition, so if we talk about Scrum for startups, so let's see what our friends say about startups, what startups are. So our friend Eric Ries, who is a more or less famous guy, is a kind of the Paul McCartney of entrepreneurship, or the Michael Jackson. Is more this kind of startup is a human institution designed to deliver a new product or service under conditions of extreme uncertainty. And that applies to many contexts that are not creating a business. This applies to a new service in an organization, a new product in an organization. That is really smart. He's really the Michael Jackson or the Michael Jordan of the thing. Because he's looking at Intuit or he's looking at GE and he wants to get hired to do some consulting gigs and get paid tons of money. So he says startup is everything. It's not just these cool little kids in the, trying to make a living in the corners of Silicon Valley. And then Steve Blank, his mentor, and the father of us all with the customer development cycle and methodology. He's much more of an academic guy. No? So he has these solid definitions of everything. If you don't know the Startup Owner's Manual, you should try to read it. And if you do, really come tell me, and I'll pay for the time. A startup is an organization formed to search for a repeatable and scalable business model. And that's the whole goal of the organization, as you put it, is to look for that repeatable, because if we just functional organization and scalable, because we all uber rich. That's why the scalable is part of the game. There is also another condition of why scalability is a clear and an important issue, and it's because we are now in the information revolution times, and either you make it or you're dead. Either all the social networks, how many of you are still in social networks like the 2004 in Ning or this kind of social networks? Please, I'm curious. Any of you using Ning still? No? It was huge back in the days. Friendster? MySpace? No! Do you have friends there? And really? But do you still use it?
I check it, not I do it once a year.
Once a year? The same like Facebook users. No, once a year you go there, you check. You don't get 100 notifications a day. So we're now in the days of shifting paradigms. So when it was before Google, there was some internet. There wasn't not much, but there was some internet, mainly porn. But there was some there, and Agile was pretty late in the game of the search engines. But scalability makes it happen, and scalability makes it feasible. So when we have tools to search for this scalability and this model, and this is a cool tool that we can get from running Lean, the Lean Canvas. It's an adaptation of the business model canvas. I won't go into detail with that. This is a very Greece story, but we're here to talk about Scrum, okay? And we're here to talk about my geekness. So the first concept is you have an idea. You need to do something. You have a need that you want to accomplish with your organization. And that need is clear. Here in Mordor, there's a motherfucker that's going to take over the whole Middle Earth. And he's going to kill us all. Or if not, he's going to make us wish that we were dead. And we have the ring. So, well, what can we do with this situation? So making a plan and say a business plan and saying, okay, so I'm gonna sensors are gonna go up there and so on. Up front, you do all your waterfall planning. Probably it's a bit worthless. But as my friend Jeff Sutherland is going to say later on, planning is everything, even though plans are worthless. So we have that situation. We have that need of saving the Middle Earth. So what do? We get together with the stakeholders. We take the elves, we take the dwarves, we take the men of Rohan, we take some people from other places, a cousin of this guy of Ron, and we gather them all together and we say, okay, so what shall we do? What's the vision of this company? And they start saying, okay, so they have some different options. What can they do right now? So do you remember, any of you, which are the options that we have in this situation?
Bring it to Gondor.
Bring it to Gondor, right?
Use it to destroy the enemy.
We'll use it to destroy the enemy. That's this guy. That's why it wasn't very welcome, that offer. So then they hired him again, and they killed him in another series. So there was another option. Do you remember the other option? Destroy it! Let's destroy it! The dwarves, they are executive people. They want things done right now, right here. And they try to destroy it, it doesn't work. So the only feasible plan is to take it to Mount Doom and to destroy it there. So, okay. So then what happens? Then all the stakeholders start fighting, because it's an important issue for this company, for this organization. This is going to be the project of the year, or the project of the lifetime. So they start arguing, no, I will take it, I will take it. All the Game of Thrones of organizations start happening here. And at the end, one small little project manager who no one knows, he has some small retail store, a bar there in Baggins, in the Shire, say, I will take it. So, well, he's harmless. So they say, okay, so you can be the project manager. No, well, we're doing Scrum. You're going to be the prog owner. So you own the ring, you take it to the mountain, and and so they need a team. They need a Scrum team, and the Scrum team, they created the fellowship. They call it the Fellowship of the Ring, and they get 9 people to make the Scrum team, because 9 people was the maximum. Is the maximum. They take an alpha, the different abilities and skills that they need for this quest, and they made this huge 9 team. But 9 people teams are not usually that functional. Usually the optimum is around 5, 4.5 if you have a hobbit. So that's kind of the average. But then you have also another situation, and the minimum team for Scrum is 3 people, and that's why when they just stayed Sam and Frodo, they had to hire Gollum, because Scrum cannot function with 2 people. So that's the 3 pillars of Scrum. Jeff is gonna tell us later. That are transparency. To be able, we have this tool set of Scrum, that is the backlog, that is the reviews of all the ceremonies of Scrum, that are plan your work, see what you have done, okay, in short cycles. So all this is done to foster transparency, to be able to measure where we are at each point. Then inspect. That's what happens. That's the act of getting the value out of transparency, and then we adapt to what we have learned of how the product or the different parts of what we're implementing are working. But people love transparency. This is the kind of reactions that you get when you try people to show. So what have you? they tell them, "Ah, precious." No, that's the reaction usually that you get when you try to tell people to be transparent and to tell you where you are with this. And you try to go into detail but exactly where you are, and there you have it. You're gonna see it. If you try to implement Scrum, you're gonna see these guys more than once. And this is the Scrum framework. I won't go into detail, but this is the social. We have the social objects, that we have the product backlog, the sprint backlog, the work to make the work visible, as we were saying. What do we need to do? We prioritize, we refine. One of the key issues or the key activities of Scrum is refining the work, refining the product backlog, so we reorder the priorities, because priorities change as the plan goes on and we learn more. So we have the sprint planning, the daily Scrum. Each day we get together with the team and we talk about what's going on, the sprint reviews and the retrospectives. We have very few roles because Scrum is focused in team performance, not in individual performance. It's trying to leverage all the people, to get all the people together for them to leverage on the dynamics that the team adopts. And thus we only have one role within the team. We have the team. I'm a team member, I'm a developer. That's the only title within the company that is allowed. Then we have the product owner, that is the business girl that is running the shops and that is telling us what's the value of the project. And then we have the Scrum Master, who is Gandalf. Okay, he's always talking with the elves. He's never there because he's always talking with the elves. He's going to talk with the Rohirrim. He's always trying to settle some issues with stakeholders, and that's why Scrum didn't work that good in the Lord of the Rings, because they didn't have a dedicated Scrum Master. The Scrum Master was in many projects at the same time, and he didn't walk through Frodo to learn how to evolve Scrum, Scrumming the Scrum. Okay, so that's. So these are kind of product backlogs from Jeff's work. There's a product backlog in which we have prioritized all the different ideas and all the different items that we have to build for our project. We have the sprint backlogs that each cycle, each week or 2 weeks cycles, we decide what are we going to do in this sprint, and we have, at the end of the sprint, we have a dawn. We have these little guys here are done. This guy is almost done, which means that it doesn't count on your velocity. And this guy didn't get to be done. So we are trying to measure the team's velocity and measure blockers along the way of the team, so we can remove them. One of the key issues of Scrum, or one of the key elements that I've been removed from many of the implementations, is retrospective. And I think that's probably one of the core elements of Scrum, because the retrospectives are a ceremony that is whole to evolve the methodology, to learn how it can work better, to learn what is blocking the work of the team, to learn which are the impediments that the team is finding along the way. So this is probably these are as I was telling you, the 4 events. We have the sprint planning. Before the sprint, we plan what we're going to do. In the daily Scrum, every day we try to find out how the team is in 15 minutes, no more. If you take more than 15 minutes to do the daily Scrums, you're doing it wrong. The sprint review, in which we showcase what work has been accomplished, and the retrospectives that are the process improvement sessions. And well, that's I already told you, and that's about it. If you want to ask me about Scrum, that's Marrero. Startup Jedi on Twitter, and you can shoot now if you have some questions. We have actually, sorry, I will not stop right here. We have actually worked, and we're working with, we have here a Scrum Master of Nonabox, which is one of the rock star startups of Spanish ecosystem, and I love them with a passion. I'm biased. I will always defend it like that. But they called me to start working on Scrum, to use it as a general management practice, and actually it has worked thanks to this guy here, because he has the pay, of course, thanks to all the team, but the Scrum Master, the Gandalf, he has been much better than Gandalf in this endeavor, and he has been behind every step of the implementation and following how can we get better into delivering value to the customer. And that's the ultimate goal. It's not the framework, it's not the tools that we're using, but how can we shorten the cycles, eliminate, remove the waste of our processes, and get better at delivering value to our customers. And that's the end game of all Scrum things. Yeah, please.
It is highly theoretical, but couldn't we think about this is based on the learning cycle? Plan, do, take, act.
No, but it's not hidden. It's not. I didn't do the reference here, but it's definitely there. I mean, Jeff is going to tell that Toyota invented it all, and he's just cashing in. No, that Toyota invented lean manufacturing. That's application of this kind of plan, do, check, act methodologies, trying to get rid of all the waste that was created in the process of creating value to the customer. But for software development, it was needed to revisit this thing, to make it more, to crystallize it, to kind of catalyze it into a more synthetic set of rules. Jeff is going to tell you later on what's yeah.
Any relation between Agile and Scrum and startup?
Yeah, definitely. But actually, Lean Startup is Agile development plus marketing for the general audience. Actually, what Eric Ries has done marvelously is taking these concepts from Agile development and bringing it to the mainstream areas. The parts in which I feel that Lean Startup lacks the most is the implementation process. It's from the philosophy of Lean Startup and the high concepts that Eric is proposing to the practice. There's a big chasm that it's very difficult to implement or to bridge. And that's why I actually, coming from Lean Startup, I discovered Scrum as a set of rules that could help into implementation and execution in the execution process. Yep.
I think that sometimes the main thing using Scrum is that it's using an ideal world where you don't have any other things like maintenance, fire, and other things. Sometimes it's just difficult to manage.
You will get most of this question if you ask this question to Jeff later on in the Q&A, because he's been working with huge companies and he's been working with companies that have a lot of garbage on their shoulders, like they have a lot of legacy systems and a lot of maintenance behind them, and he can tell you how he deals with this kind of implementation. Definitely, that's one of the key issues. But
take all the points and
you only have one team most of the time when you're a startup. No? You don't have a maintenance team and the development, the new product development team. So handling this kind of maintenance work, usually it's good to save a cache of time. So if you know that your velocity in full speed is 18 points, or if you have measured the velocity of your team, and you're building things that you have to maintain, you have to save a cache to keep on the maintenance activities if they are critical to the user. If not, many times we're just maintaining services that are not that critical and that we could kill along the way. Actually, that's one of the important parts, to use some kind of test-driven development, or this kind of methodologies or practices that will help you enhance the quality of your work, because otherwise you will keep on building features, and the maintenance cost of those features is gonna kill the productivity of your team. It's gonna kind of eat all the time. So, my friends, Jeff, maybe he's waiting.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, sorry. Good. So, Mr. Sutherland, we have you now. No? We will have you full screen.
Whoa.
Cool. Look at it.
Not sure why that's happening. Okay.
Now we see you.
You have me on the screen now, but I want to share my screen and show you this presentation. Let's see if this works. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah.
Is the video working?
It's not working, the presentation. Jeff, the presentation is not going through.
Okay, let me turn off screen share and try to turn it on again. Okay, here we go. Let me try it again. When I do that, I get I'm not sure why that's doing that.
Okay, so
Why don't I log off and try to reconnect? Maybe that will.
open that.
Open the video in the other window.
The video in the other window.
In Nast, I think you cannot play that YouTube video in the screen sharing. It's not the rest of the presentation we can see fine in screen sharing. But the YouTube video, you have to open it on the flagging there.
Yeah.
There's a difference of content.
So Jeff, why don't we go to the default plan of managing the presentation from our end?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Why don't we do that?
Okay. So let
Okay, the problem is the videos are not, we're not working at your end, but we'll do the best we can. Shall I go ahead?
One second. Let me see you, find you. We share the. Enrique, you're sharing?
I'm not sharing.
Good.
Enrique is sharing.
We have it.
I am sharing.
Okay. Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, recently I've been talking about a new book that's come out. The companies on the right I've been meeting with over the last month. Most of them have over 200 Scrum teams, so they're quite large implementations. If you go forward to the next slide. Enrique, you're gonna, yeah, there we go. I'm the CEO of Scrum Inc. We have a practice of training and consulting around the world. We also produce a site called Scrum Lab, which has content about Scrum, videos, presentations, slides, and that sort of thing. And we also have a hardware practice. We use Scrum in developing hardware around the world. Next slide. One of the reasons I got into Scrum is because of the work environment. The surveys show that most people do not like their work. In fact, the only thing they like worse than work is being sick in bed. Next slide, please. The New York Times recently did a survey on why people don't like work, and they don't have time for creative thinking. They can't focus. They can't work on what they like to do. They're not connected to the mission of the company. All these things. They feel like work is not working for them. Next slide. As the famous Scottish poet said, you know, the best laid schemes of mice and men often go wrong and leave us nothing but grief and pain instead of the promised joy. So the problem is that companies and people can't get things done, and that leads to a lot of suffering. Next slide. I first learned about that as a cadet at West Point. This is a picture shot during the early part of the training that they call Beast Barracks. And after running around all day, being yelled at night, we had what was called a shower formation, where you had to stand at attention and brace hard enough to generate enough sweat to drench your bathrobe. And then you were let into the shower. So I had to learn how to generate twice as much sweat in half the time. And that's the title. That's the new book is called Twice the Work in Half the Time. So it's based on this kind of thinking. Next slide. In my last year at West Point, I was training officer of one of the 24 companies, Company L2. It was an interesting company because it had been known as the Loose Deuce for 100 years because of its sloppy performance on the parade field. And no matter how much extra marching we had them do, no matter how much we told them they should perform better, nothing worked. So I started putting colored notes on the company bulletin board every night, the scores for the parades. And you know, we lost 8 points because Charlie stuck his sword in the dirt on the parade field, or we lost 5 points because the company commander did not articulate his command precisely. And said nothing, just put the score up where everyone could see it every night. And to the amazement of the entire Corps of Cadets, Company L2, within 3 months, became the #1 marching company in the Corps for the first time in 202 years. They were so good, next slide, that around this time, General Douglas MacArthur died, one of our most famous graduates. He was very close to the Corps of Cadets in his last years. He gave a famous speech that every cadet has to memorize to this day. And he specified at his funeral there would be a company of cadets marching behind his casket to put him in the grave. And Company L2, because it was the #1 company in the Corps of Cadets, was selected to bury General MacArthur. During our last parade, my future father-in-law talked to me after the parade. He said, you know, the next to the last company on the field was totally different than all the rest. They looked like they floated across the field. And I said, well, that's the company that buried General MacArthur, and they will never forget it. So what I learned from this is making work visible will cause teams to self-organize to achieve great things. Next slide. I also lived in the room that General MacArthur, General Dwight D. Eisenhower had lived in when he was a cadet. And so I thought a lot about him. He had a famous speech where he said, plans are worthless, planning and everything. Planning is everything. When he planned D-Day to take the beaches at Normandy, he spent a lot of time at it. But he knew once the first shot was fired, the plan would be useless. Next slide. And I learned that firsthand when I graduated. I went into the Air Force and flew our Air Force Phantoms. Here's one of my fellow pilots, Ed Atterbury, getting shot down over Hanoi by a SAM missile. If you look at the dot under the plane, that's him bailing out. He was captured. He then escaped. He was captured a second time and tortured to death. So about half of the people I flew with got shot down over North Vietnam. Most of them did not come back. Fortunately, I got out of there alive, and my major strategy was to make sure when I crossed over the border into North Vietnam, I did not follow my flight plan. If you created a plan and followed it, you were predictable and easy to shoot down. So you had to begin an evasive maneuver as soon as you cross the border and never stop evading until you get back into a safe zone. And in later years, I found that software projects are even more risky than flying over North Vietnam. Every day, there's a bullet coming at your project. And if you as a project leader do not know how to dodge that bullet, your project will go down. Next slide. When I get back from Vietnam, you know, you have emotional reactions from experiences like this. The first one was feeling guilty that I survived and all my buddies were dead. The second one is amazed to be alive, and the third is, well, what am I going to do with my life? You know, I escaped and came back alive, and I didn't really expect to live through it. So every day became a new day for me, and I decided I asked the Air Force to send me back to school to finish, to get a degree to teach at the Air Force Academy. It gave me a lot of time to think, and I got heavily into computing there, and also wound up from the Air Force Academy, a professor at the Air Force Academy, wound up as a professor at the University of Colorado Medical School for many years, funded to do supercomputing analysis of biological systems. Next slide, please. And because I was working with technologies that were used by big banks, a large banking company came by one day and said, you know, we have 150 banks all over North America. We're rolling out automated teleterminals using technology that you're an expert in. And we're having a lot of problems. But you and your team have all the knowledge, and we have all the money. What if we put the money and the knowledge together? So they made me an offer that my wife couldn't refuse, and I wound up working at the bank as their vice president for advanced systems. And while I was working on advanced technologies, I kept on noticing that most of the programmers were COBOL programmers, and most of their projects were late. And when they were late, the management was upset. They would make them work harder. They'd make them work overtime, work weekends, go on death marches. They reminded me of Roman rowers on a Roman galleon with someone cracking the whip over them. And they were managing their projects by these Gantt charts. And they had walls full of Gantt charts with thousands of tasks. Every task had a name and a date on it. And when I looked at that chart, I realized that if any one of those dates slipped, the whole project would slide to the right and be late. And it reminded me of training new fighter pilots how to land a high-performance jet. Next slide. I'm not sure we can get this video to work. It'd be nice if you could see this fighter landing, because as he's coming down final approach, he's making small adjustments every step of the way. And his goal is to touch that airplane down at the end of the runway and slam it on the runway. When you land, that hitting the runway hard absorbs energy and slows you down. The new pilots tended to come in high, and if you land in the middle of the runway, you can slide right off the end of the runway. That happened to be a couple of times. Fortunately, this aircraft has a tail hook, and it caught I was able to catch the chains at the end of the runway to avoid going off the runway into buildings or trees or whatever. So, I went to the CEO of the bank and I said, your people are having trouble landing projects, and I want you to give me the worst business unit in the bank, and I will show them how to deliver on time. And but I need everybody that touches the product. So give me all the people who work on the automated teller systems, sales, marketing, support, the engineering. I'll run them as a little company within a company. We'll present financial results to you every month. But the rest of the time, the management team needs to stay out of my company, and I'll show you how to do this. Well, what I did was I set it up and started running 1-week sprints. For all the teams, I broke the company down into sub-teams. Every team was running a 1-week sprint. Next slide. And they build a backlog at the beginning of the week. On Monday, they prioritize it by business value. In fact, for engineering, we had a financial expert estimating the revenue that could be achieved by every feature we were building and prioritize it in that way. And I also introduced a burn down to replace the Gantt chart to show them how to land the project, to guide them down the glide path and bring it in on time. So every month backlog and every Friday, whatever we built went live. And within less than 6 months, that business unit became the most profitable business unit in the bank. That led me into many other projects where they wanted me to fix things. Next slide. And I worked not only for the bank, but I got pulled into running an object database company. And while I was there, I brought, in the upper left, there's a video that won't work, but it shows one of these 6-legged robots, one of the first robots that a company called iRobot built. They were originally students at MIT. They came by my company, my object database company. They wanted to rent lab space, so I allowed them to build the robots inside of my company. The robots were interesting because they had no central processor. MIT found that it was impossible to build a smart system by building a big computer. You had to have an interactive system. Each leg had a chip that knew how to run a leg. There was a chip in the spine that could coordinate legs. There was a neural network chip in the head that figured out what to do. And there was no database. All data was from sensor readings. The world was the database. And this robot inspected and adapted to the environment. At the same time, I was working with Acción International, which was the leading microenterprise lending organization in the Western Hemisphere, based on the work of the Grameen Bank. And I noticed that we could bootstrap teams of really poor people, 5 or 6 people. They would each get a business plan. When they all had a plan, we would loan them €25. And then their goal was to go out and execute the plan, meet regularly, share information. And when they paid back the loan, we'd loan them another €25 to scale up the business. And I found that, a woman that couldn't feed her children within a few weeks could feed her kids. Within a month could buy clothes and then send them to school. And within 6 months, they were building a new house. So I noticed that these poor groups bootstrapping up, which were similar to the robot learning how to walk. And so this idea of bootstrapping, I brought into my day job in software, and I said to my team, I said, you know, you guys, your projects are always late, your software always has too many bugs, management always thinks you're bad developers. I have an idea how to change that. Are you interested? And they said they were. And I said, I bet we could deliver more software in 6 months. We could deliver so much that the management and the customers would ask us to slow down. And we could do it using these bootstrapping techniques that I'm seeing both in robot creation and also in working with people in South America. And so we went to work on a team that was building a new product. Next slide. The product was designed to do round-trip engineering. You could build an object-oriented analysis design, and it would auto-generate code both for the business logic, for the user interface. It would create the bindings to relational databases, and you could dive into the code, change a line of code, and it would regen the entire design. So this tooling we were going to give to big customers, like a typical customer for us was Ford Motor Company. Our company was the first fourth-generation language company. They were using our products to build all their internal applications. We wanted to replace that with the next-generation technology. And as we were creating the product, we noticed that we were going to have to create a new organizational strategy, team strategy, to introduce into Ford Motor Company because of what is known as Conway's Law. Ford had a hierarchical management system, command and control, and because of Conway's Law, we knew that hierarchical management would reflect in the code, and that would create brittle systems, systems that were hard to refactor, systems where you build yourself into an architectural corner and can't get out. So we needed an organizational structure that was object-oriented, that we could use with these tools to build their systems. The other thing we knew was Brooks' Law, that if a team gets too big, it really slows down. We had data on hundreds of projects showing that if a 6-person team takes a year to do a project, if you add 4 people to a 6-person team and make it 10, it takes a year and a half. Adding 4 people delays the project 6 months. So we had to have a structure that had small teams, significantly smaller than 10 people. The third effect we had to deal with was what Peter Drucker called the cuckoo effect. I had trained many management teams on Peter Drucker's book on entrepreneurship and innovation, and in that book he has a chapter on the cuckoo effect. The cuckoo is a bird who lays their egg in another bird's nest, and if the other bird finds out, the other bird will throw it out of the nest and smash it on the forest floor. The same thing is true in a corporation. Drucker pointed out that if you do any innovation inside a corporation, it's like a foreign bacteria, and the immune system of the corporation will rise up and try to crush it. Well, I knew as a fighter pilot how Lockheed had handled that by building skunk works out in the California desert, where nobody could bother them. The management didn't know what they were doing. They couldn't spend any time there, and they could build sophisticated new technologies in 10% of the time at 10% of the cost of Lockheed in the internal corporation. My only problem was that I didn't think I could get people to send the Scrum teams out into the California desert. It needed to work right inside corporate headquarters. So we had to design an organizational structure to deal with this. Next slide. And it is an object-oriented organizational structure where teams are collected together by virtual teams, the double lines. We often call it Scrum of Scrums. And any Scrum of Scrums can look like one team to another Scrum of Scrums. So this can scale infinitely in a network. In fact, it's the way the internet works, basically. Say one team is maybe a Google Maps team, and it presents an API. It looks like one team to Zillow, which creates a real estate application on top of Google Maps, and maybe somebody used Zillow for something else. There's nobody in charge. There's no central point of control. There's no hierarchical structure. Okay, this is the way you want to build Scrum teams and scale them up. Next slide. The capstone of all of this, and as we were thinking about how to formalize it and present it to Ford Motor Company, we came across this paper called The New Product Development Game by Professors Takeuchi and Nanaka, published in the Harvard Business Review. And in there they talked about 3 styles of project management. Type A is traditional waterfall project management that they saw at NASA. Type B, Fuji Xerox tried to implement NASA's style of project management, but they found that there's a huge failure rate, and that the failure rate's caused by big documents and siloed departments and handoffs. So Fuji Xerox eliminated the handoffs. Everything was face-to-face. They banned the big documents, and they got much better results. But the best teams, they found in that paper at Honda, 3M in the United States, lean companies. Later, Takeuchi spent 6 years studying Toyota. And these were cross-functional teams working very closely together, delivering product in short iterations. And it reminded them, Takeuchi and Nanaka, of rugby, and particularly the Scrum formation in rugby. So they said, we're going to call this Scrum Project Management. Well, when our team read that paper, we said, that's perfect. We're going to tell Ford Motor Company that they need to implement Scrum Project Management. And we'll show them the paper, and in the paper it describes how to manage these teams, how to set them up, how to motivate them. Next slide. These teams are motivated by transcendent goals. For example, the Prius team, they wanted to green the planet, get a car that gets twice the gas mileage. They wanted it delivered in half the time. In order to do that, they're given autonomy. Nobody tells them how to do it. The team has to figure it out themselves. And they do it through cross-fertilization, knowledge generation, and community. This is lean product development. That's what Scrum is based upon. So one of the great things about Scrum is we have the entire background of lean publications and experience that can be brought to bear on building the good Scrum teams. Next slide. In 1995, I got together with Ken Schwaber. Ken was CEO of a project management software company, and I convinced him that he should be selling Scrum instead of selling project management methodologies. And in 2001, we went together to the Agile Manifesto meeting, and in Utah, 17 thought leaders discussing what they called then lightweight processes. It was really Scrum and extreme programming were the processes under discussion. There was one person there from DS team in Europe, but mainly it was a debate between XP and Scrum on what did we have in common and what should we call what we're doing. Well, during the first day, we agreed that we would call it Agile because the hardware companies had started talking about going beyond lean and getting the customer involved in product creation. And there was a book called Agile Competitors that had 100 examples of hardware companies, lean companies that were involving customers. So we said we should call what we're doing Agile, even though we're not working in hardware. Next slide. On the second day, we spent time during a break. 9 of the people went out on the ski slope, 8 of us stayed in the room, and Martin Farlow went to the board. He said it would be really important that we agree on something before we break from this conference, something that we can talk about later. And so we brainstormed during the break what we could agree upon. And the first thing was individuals and interactions over processes and tools. It wasn't that we didn't like processes and tools. It's that processes and tools never generate a great team. A great team is generated by individuals and the way they work together. And Bell Labs had a decade of research proving this. And they showed that there are teams 50 times faster than average teams because of the way they work together. And the second thing we agree upon is that the internet was being driven by short iterations of product delivery, and this working product in short iterations was critical to get customer feedback and to get rapid innovation. And it wasn't that we didn't need some documentation, but we needed only just enough, which turns out to be about 95% less than most traditional companies have. The third thing we agreed on was what Agile is all about, getting the customer involved in product creation. And finally, responding to change over following a plan. That's what we were all about, minimizing the cost of change so we can adapt to what the customer needs as quickly as possible. Well, this was written in 15 minutes. And when we were done, the break was over. The other 9 people came back in. Ward Cunningham looked at it, one of the XP founders, said, "That is awesome," and nobody changed a word. So it was like we wrote a note and put it in a bottle and threw it in the ocean, and now everybody's reading it all over the world, and people are implementing it. It's amazing. Okay, next slide. We're seeing the Agile Manifesto move, keep on going. The Agile Manifesto move into many, many domains now. Next slide. Click it again. Keep going. Next slide. There we go. Okay, so let's go back to traditional project development and the Air Force, where I started my career. Here's the worst project in the world right now. It's $143 billion over budget. It's a waterfall project. 90% of the budget for this airplane is software. And the latest delay was 13 months because of software testing. They're testing at the end, which is waterfall. Okay, next slide. The best airplane in the world, according to Aviation Week, is the Saab Gripen. It is built with Scrum in 2-week sprints. Every 6 months, they do a major operating system upgrade to the airplane along with new hardware. So every release of the plane is faster, it's lighter, it's more sophisticated electronics, better targeting systems, and it's cheaper. It's just like your laptop. It gets more powerful and cheaper every year, okay? The cost of this airplane is the lowest in the world for an airplane of its type, about 20% of the cost of its competitors. Next slide. We're seeing this 20% number many places in hardware. For example, we're consultants to John Deere, and they build agricultural equipment with an 800% improvement in production. And so they can deliver at about 20% of the cost they used to. We see the same thing at SpaceX. So Scrum is expanding not only throughout software. As I mentioned, most of those companies at the beginning were in Silicon Valley, and all of them had more than 200 teams. The scale of Scrum in Silicon Valley is astonishing. And basically everybody is moving to Scrum. But it's not only in software, it's not only in hardware, it's moving across companies, sales, marketing, finance. We've seen it being used in families. A lot of people are doing their weddings with Scrum. Next slide, please. We've gone back to the Green Foundation now. The Green Bank has created a foundation to work in agriculture, healthcare, education. The agricultural headquarters is in Uganda. We did some training. One of our certified Scrum Masters did training in Uganda last summer, and they said, "Thank you, Jeff, for bringing our idea back to us in a better form that we can implement it." They had this great video of this poor farmer standing in her field, a woman with a baby in her arms. She said, you know, the Green Foundation Scrum teams had come to her field, and on their app, iPhone app, they had pictures of her crop and showed how the crop could have problems. You know, her leaves were yellow. And also on the iPhone, it showed how to fix it. So she said, within 6 months, I've doubled my crop. Not only that, she said they had the prices for the crop in the big cities, and I saw that my crops were selling for 1,000 shillings a bushel in the cities, and I was only getting 300 from the middleman. So I negotiated up to 600 shillings a bushel. So now, within 6 months, I have twice as much crop. I sell it for twice the price, and I have 400% more money, okay? Twice the work in half the time is 400%. If a poor farmer in Uganda can do this, you all can do this just like her. Next slide. But the leading edge of Scrum today is actually in education, and particularly in the Netherlands, eduscrum.com, where the high school students use Scrum. The bell rings, they come running into the room in teams of 4. They go to the wall and they post their Scrum board with their sticky notes, have their daily meeting, run to the desk and start working. I talked to the teacher. The teacher is just standing there watching. The teacher is the product owner. He says, I only get to talk to the kids, have questions. And my job is to check to make sure they're done and everybody understands every lesson. I asked the kids if this was more fun than the old way. They said, yes, they have a definition of fun for every story they do. Their grades in the Scrum classes are, on a scale of 1 to 10, 7.1 average, whereas the waterfall classes grades average 5. So grades are significantly better, and they finish the semester weeks early. So it's faster, it's more fun, and the product outcome is incredible, particularly with the handicapped children who get pulled in and involved directly. One of the guys who was an autistic kid 2 years previously, he could hardly talk to anyone, had become a Scrum Master and a great communicator and a leader. So this way of working is transformative to the children. Well, next slide. Well, all of this and all of these stories and many others are described in great detail in my new book, The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time. And I hope you take a look at it. It's available all over the world. I don't think there's a Spanish edition yet, but there are editions in other languages, maybe a Spanish one coming. But you can order it anywhere. So those are my remarks. Nash, maybe I could answer some questions if we have time.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Jeff. I will give you. I'll try to show you the room in which we are. Okay, you have. I didn't lie. You had a bit of an audience around. So.
Super.
This is our Scrum Master there.
Yeah.
The one with. Good. So I will make a question later on, but let's start with the audience. Please. Any questions? Yeah.
I'm sorry if it sounds a bit stupid. How do you know if you're agile or not? I mean, how do you know what to improve? Because maybe we use some of the knowledge from the group, applying like organizing tasks, managing tasks in the better way possible. But how do you know if you're agile?
Okay, Jeff, did you hear that? No.
Can you repeat it?
Yeah. She's asking how to assess if you're agile or not. Okay. When you're using some of these techniques, how can you self-evaluate your team too?
Well, we have many self-evaluation tools, but the number one tool is working software at the end of a sprint. That means the features you build, they work, they've been tested, an end user can try them out, and you can start this feedback cycle that builds speed, innovation, and quality. One of the problems is that about half of the so-called agile teams today in the world do not have working software at the end of the sprint. This is the biggest problem. If you do not have working software at the end of the sprint and your testing spills over into the next sprint, if you're building complex projects like operating systems, the amount of time to do the testing in the next sprint can be 24 times the amount of testing it would take if you did it right away. And so it can take you 2 years to deliver something that you could deliver in a month. Even if you're doing a simple project, if you slip that testing, you will create a 2 to 4 times delay in delivery of the product. So this is the biggest problem that teams have, and it's the #1 thing that I'm talking about these days.
More questions? Yeah. How often do you sprint? Could we kind of... is there... Okay, so I will break this question into 3. How often do you sprint? Do sprints go back on back? Is the girl asking, and how? And I would say, what's the optimal length of sprints?
Okay, the sprint is always 4 weeks or less. Most sprints in the world today are 2 weeks. The best teams I see do 1 week sprints. Sprints are back to back. They're continuous. They never stop.
Good. You had another question?
I'm reading a paper internet that Spotify have a different, different kind of organization, because you have like a matrix organization where each Scrum team develops one part of the interface or the radio. I would like to know if you think that that's the future. That in bigger companies, they will do the same thing.
It's kind of a utopia of Scrum. There's one of the participants that is asking about the Spotify example, whether you think this Spotify kind of model in which they are using the matrix application of Scrum is the future, or is somehow a futuristic view on Scrum, or...
No, I think it's a right view. I like the Spotify model because it's very close to what I implemented, 10 to 15 years ago at what is now GE Healthcare. It has the minimal overhead. It's removed a huge amount of waste from the system. So it's a very good model to look at. Now, Spotify is focused more on innovation and emerging new features as fast as possible, and they may be different than a very traditional company that has different requirements. So it's going to depend on the company. There are several scaling online courses on our site at scruminc.com where we discuss all of this in great depth.
Good. I want to give you a question. The hard question at the end, it was also, it's a recurring question, so you probably have a trained answer. But how to deal with maintenance. If you have a single team, that here we are in an entrepreneurs meetup, so usually you only have one team in your company. How do you deal with developing new products or new features and keeping the maintenance requirements or pace?
Okay, I always want the team that built the product to be responsible for maintenance, because that way they will make sure the product quality is there. If you split off maintenance into another team, then the development team tends to put out more bugs, okay? So an extreme example of that is Kayak, a travel site, which is not far from where I am here in Massachusetts. And the CEO has a big red phone in the middle of the development area. And if there's a bug, it has a fire alarm that goes off. And if a customer calls in, and the developers complain bitterly about it all the time, and he tells them all you have to do is answer the phone, and the fire alarm will go off. And That phone hardly rings at all anymore, okay? Because the developers do not put bugs into the field when they have to fix them.
Yeah. You have the answer in the book. I've read it. It's awesome. How do you transition from a regular organization to an agile one?
Well, first you need to have a good reason to do it, and and if you're, the best situation is if you have competitive pressure, where you need to get a lot more done faster. For example, I'm working with a big defense contractor locally, one of the biggest in the world, and they were told if they lost a huge contract to an Agile competitor who bid half price, and the government told them, you will never get another contract from the government unless you can deliver everything at half price. So they came to me and they said, well, Jeff, we need to do Scrum. We not only need to do Scrum, we need to do it well, because we have to commit fixed price bid price. Okay, that's a perfect situation, because now we have their attention, they're focused. We train the Scrum Masters, we train the teams, we train the product owner. I apologize for we're on Google Hangout. Somebody else is trying to hang out with me. Hopefully they'll hang up in a moment. We train the product owner, Scrum Masters team. We train the management. We have coaches that help them get going. It's a big transition for a company like that. Most companies don't start with that big a problem. They start small with a pilot project. They just get one team trained. One product owner, one Scrum Master, and then the goal would be to have that pilot project work well, and then expand it, go on to another one. So you just need to get started.
It's out of necessity. So out of necessity, it helps focus on the big changes that you have to address. No?
Exactly. Change is hard for people. They don't want to change. Even if what they're doing is not working, they still don't want to change. So the question is how, what would be the motivation that would make people move?
So we will take a last question. Yeah.
Is there any software to Scrum?
Okay, so my friend is asking whether there is a software tool or that you would recommend for using Scrum, for implementing Scrum.
Okay, there's hundreds of Scrum toolings out there. There are three major categories. The market leader, which are tools built specifically for Scrum and have everything you might want, are version 1 and Rally. You can try those out free for one team. The biggest users tool that has the most users in the world right now is Jira. It's a tracking system that can be used to track waterfall projects, but it has a Scrum layer on top that does all the Scrum reporting. It is a pretty good tool, and it's inexpensive, so a lot of people have adopted it. You really, though, want as light a weight tool as possible, and the best of the lightweight tools is Pivotal Tracker, pivotaltracker.com. It's what I use in my company. You want to use the minimal amount of tooling, and we only use that because we have distributed teams. And if we are in the same room, we want to use sticky notes. That's the simplest, lightest weight tool.
So, the last question, last. Okay, shoot your boot.
Okay, Scrum is about maybe teams. Normally, developers are just individuals. They don't have to work as a team. How do you manage? What's the best way to get them working together? And also, how do you treat rockstar developers that have such very good
So, how do you get developers to work together? Because usually they are coming from an environment in which they are individuals just fighting on their own. And how do you deal with rockstar developers to integrate into a team?
Okay.
Good.
Well, first of all, you know, software development is a team sport. If you want to go fast with high quality, people have to work together, and so you have to start building what we call these T-shaped developers. They have a skill in one area, but they can help out in 2 other areas, and you know, it requires coaching and training. The rockstar developers need to participate. They need to help mentor other people. They need to work with a team. If they don't, they can bring a team down. I remember one recently in Europe. The rockstar was demotivating the team. They threw him off the team, and the team immediately doubled production. Team performance is way higher than individual performance. Way higher. And
actually making them accountable for team performance rather than individual performance.
Developers need to be accountable for team performance, yes. Everything is based on team performance, not individual. And you know, it requires good. It's like playing soccer. What happens if you get out in the team and one guy won't pass the ball? It doesn't work. Okay, Scrum is like, it's a sport, so everybody has to participate. And yeah, we like rock star soccer players, but they have to play with a team, or the team will not win. Okay, it's the same way in software.
So the book that Jeff told you, the doing Scrum, the art of doing twice the work in half the time, it has a number of stories from what the FBI is doing and how they started working with the Scrum methodologies, and a lot of different situations that Jeff has mentioned, going into detail. And there you can grasp a lot of value on how to land all these issues. It's very educational, I will say. So
yeah, we should say that the UK version of the book has a different cover, and it's just called Scrum. And you might point that out to people if they get the UK version, the English version in Europe. It's a different cover. Same book.
Good. So Jeff, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure once again to have you around. And all these people here, thank you as well for helping us get more self-organized.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I'm impressed that you guys are working so late on Scrum in Europe.
Thank you, Jeff.
See you later.
Later. Gracias, Enrique. Thank you very much, Enrique, for being there, supporting us. Eating all my bullshit the whole day. Thank you so much, Enrique. You are the team.
One for the team, man, as always.
Later.
Later.